The July 15, 2021 meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will please come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Delapietro?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
Ms. Anderson?
Here. At this time, please join me in welcoming our new appointed superintendent, Dr. Joseph Massimino, as well as our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Dr. Maria Giancarelli, and the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Mr. Kendall Ali. Welcome. Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the notice of meetings.
Thank you, Madam President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows. On January 11th, 2021, it was emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Ross Street, School Number 11, and the Board of Education Administration Building, also published on the school district website.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, please read the closed session statement.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to motion for the approval of the following closed session statement. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempted from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. In addition, the board will discuss negotiations with the WTEA related to a sidebar agreement. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Please rise for the salute to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
No motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar, seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Delapietro?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
And Ms. Anderson?
Here. Please note Mr. Velez is not here due to a personal matter.
So noted.
Mr. Secretary, please state for the record any notice of bids received by the board.
Madam President, there are none at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Massimino, please state for the record the superintendent's reports for the month of June 2021.
Madam President, I present the following monthly reports: the student registers and file due report, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, bomb threat reports, and reports of the attendance officers.
Thank you.
Madam President, did we do the minutes from previous?
Minutes? No. So you,
A motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So motion.
It's 2 meetings.
Okay, for the last two meetings, is there a motion?
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Delapietro, second by Mr. Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carried. As notification to the public, please note that the August board meeting has been rescheduled for Wednesday, August 25th. The public is invited to speak at the conclusion of each agenda. Comments at this time shall be limited to the items on the agenda being presented. When you come to the microphone, please provide your name and the section of the township in which you reside. As per Regulation 1100D, comments must be limited to no more than 5 minutes. No response will be given until you have completed your opportunity to speak. Superintendent's agenda, Dr. Massimino.
Madam President, I have 13 items to present to the board.
Do I have a motion for the superintendent's agenda?
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Delapietro. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Policy and Planning Agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Madam President. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, moves the 2 items. I move the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Curriculum Agenda, Mr. Treebwasser.
Thank you, Madam President. The Curriculum Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following 5 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Treebwasser,
Second?
seconded by Ms. Bourdain. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Finance and Insurance Agenda, Mr. Tamburello.
Thank you, Madam President. The Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 10 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 10 items.
I have a motion by Mr. Tamburello,
Second?
seconded by Ms. Bourdain. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Athletics and Extracurricular Agenda, Mr. Molnar.
Thank you, Madam President. The Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following. Tonight, I'll be moving items 1 through 5.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Buildings and Grounds Agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Madam President. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator, present the following 2 items. I move the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Tamburello. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Madam President?
Mr. Harris.
Just want to recognize item number 1 for the audience and those viewing at home. District, I want to applaud them for taking the proactive approach of doing a district-wide capital improvement plan, looking at the exterior of all buildings, the mechanical systems, electrical systems, plumbing system, our ADA compliance, and sustainability. I want to just make 2 comments to the administration, just after thinking about it and looking at the proposal. If we could look at 2 additional things, indoor air quality, if we could just make sure that that is something that's investigated as part of the assessment, and then also as part of the proposal by the vendor, is that they're going to be with the principal, the custodians, buildings and ground staff. Could you also make a point that the union representatives of each building, or at least at the district level, is consulted? They certainly have a different perspective teaching in the building every day. So, thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
And Mrs. Anderson?
Yes. Transportation Agenda, Mr. Delapetro.
Thank you, Madam President. The Transportation Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 4 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Delapetro,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Personnel Agenda, Mr. Molnar.
Thank you, Madam President. The Personnel Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, presents the following. Tonight, I'll be moving 33 items.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Sedana. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Are there any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes. Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations?
Nothing at this time, Madam President.
Is there any old business that should be brought to the attention of the board? Is there any new business that should be brought to the attention of the board? Mr. Harris?
Madam President? Dr. Massimino, did you want to go ahead of me? I'll go last. I saw you lean in there. I'll go last. All right, just two quick heads up to the public. It recently went out from the administration about the reminder of the aftercare program. Enrollment is still going on for September 2021. Visit the district's website for more information or call 732-499-4808. The deadline to apply for our aftercare program, which is held at our schools, is August the 5th, so make sure you jump on that if interested. Secondly, I want to thank Dr. Massimino for putting this out per the Policy and Planning Committee agenda we had recently. On Wednesday the 14th, just yesterday, the district sent out the school supply list for all elementary school students and parents, so parents and guardians. If you're eager to already do your back-to-school shopping, the list is already available to you. Dr. Massimino, I just asked if you could put that on the website and social media when your staff gets a chance next week. Absolutely. And then finally, Ms. Anderson and I tag team at the conclusion of the board meeting in working with TV 35. There's going to be a new bulletin that will provide some updates of, with phone numbers or just things going on in the school district. So the conclusion of the broadcast tonight and the prior meeting, there was a bulletin with just some reminders and things of that nature. So thank you, Ms. Anderson, and thank you to the TV 35 crew. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Sure. Mr. Molnar?
Madam President, I have two announcements for our special needs community. The Woodbridge Elks Lodge 2116 and the Rawway Elks Lodge 1075 are having a summer fun day for individuals with special needs. It's going to be held Sunday, July 25th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Woodbridge Elks Lodge on Rawway Avenue in Woodbridge. Registration is recommended. Please visit the Woodbridge Elks Lodge Facebook page to get more information on how to register and the events that are going to be held that day. And then also on Friday, July 30th, United We Shine charity concert is going to be held behind Woodbridge High School at 7 p.m. Tickets are $10. It's free for individual with special needs. It's going to be a great show. We got a lot of talented performers that are going to be performing for you. Bring your own chair or a blanket. There's going to be a 50-50 raffle. Tickets are available at www.shiningstarsnetwork.org, or you can walk up the day to show and buy tickets. Thank you.
Dr. Massimino?
Madam President, thank you. I just want to make a brief statement. It's come to my attention through various sources that there is some current concern about what we're teaching in terms of equity, diversity, inclusion, and critical race theory. To clear up any ambiguity that may exist, we are unequivocally not teaching critical race theory in the Woodbridge Township Public School District. As a former social studies teacher, I'm well aware of the importance of teaching the historic path of our nation, including having the difficult conversations about racism, sexism, and other inequities. To ensure that our students understand different perspectives, feel included, have tolerance, and display empathy, we will continue to infuse our curricula and classrooms with lessons and dialogue that teach diversity and equity. It is my hope that all stakeholders will support our efforts in creating a stronger school community. Thank you.
We will now open the meeting for public comment. When you come to the microphone, please provide your name and the section of the township in which you reside. As per Regulation 1100D, comments must be limited to no more than 5 minutes. No response will be given until you have completed your opportunity to speak. For those residents unable to attend tonight's meeting in person, you may email your comments to superintendent@woodbridge.k12.nj.us.
Good evening, Tom Maris, Fords, New Jersey. I'd like to start out by congratulating Dr. Masimoto and Mino, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, sir. I'm becoming the new superintendent of schools. I've had a little chance to look into your background, and I can just say it is absolutely stellar. You're a well-educated man, and as I understand it, a very independent-minded and very even-handed individual who I think will serve this community and this school district extremely well. I look forward to working with you in the future, and the great things I hope you'll accomplish with the school. I may say the same thing about Dr. Kendall Alley, who is now is taking on the position of Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. He has an outstanding resume, well-educated, experienced in the Newark school system, which must have been quite a challenge for him. So I look forward to having conversations with him at some point in time. And I want to thank you, Doctor, for your opening remarks about CRT, because I think there's a little confusion about the difference between CRT, which came out of academia, if you will, and some will say back into the communist doctrines, which it may well be. But then there's the offshoot of it, which is now what we're talking about, and that's the DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, which many look at as just an offset or a polite way of still getting CRT in there. I questioned myself how this school board took on the need to get into, I just refer to it as DEI from now on, for brevity's sake. That's what I'm talking about, DEI. And I was wondering if anybody on the board had really pushed to have that. And it's not a matter of any one individual on this board or collective of individuals on this board pushing it. The fact is, you're mandated by the state of New Jersey, thanks to Governor Phil Murphy, or as I like to call him, Comrade Murphy, and the state legislator. They have given you absolutely no choice. You have to teach it, but you do have the flexibilities in how to teach it. And I think that is where we are most concerned. What is actually going to be taught and how is it going to be taught? Because obviously it's up to teachers, and teachers are humans, so they vary from person to person, and their own ideologies may come into it. There are a lot of concerns what it's going to include. There are, if I looked at the, actually A44542R, which is the New Jersey Assembly's bill when it passed this, and it says beginning as of 2020-21-22 school year, each school district shall incorporate instructions on diversity and inclusion. The curriculum for students in grades kindergarten through 12 as part of the district's implementation of New Jersey learning standards in comprehensive health and physical education. The instructions shall highlight and promote diversity, income diversity, equity, inclusion, tolerance, and belonging on topics including in connection with gender and sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, disabilities and religious tolerances, and unconscious bias. There are a couple of things in there that really stand out. Unconscious bias, what is that? How do you teach it and how do you explain it? What's even more troubling, I think, to a lot of people, thanks to one of the candidates for governor, I don't have to mention his name because I'm not promoting any politics here, but brought up the fact that he was very concerned. He thought at 6th grade, apparently it's at 8th grade, that children are even going to have to be taught in their sexual education about anal intercourse. I don't know if that's going to be part of your curriculum. If that's mandated by the state, it's a frightening thing because I think that is the providence of parents, as is religion. It shouldn't be something taught in school. You do not teach religions here by the Constitution. You may refer to them as historical parts, but they're not to be taught here, and I fully appreciate that. But I don't see why we have to teach about the inclusion of the LGBTQ community and what they prefer. I mean, to explain that there are differences in human beings, I fully understand it, appreciate it, and I think we should give kids an education. Unfortunately, all too often, the homes themselves are lacking in that kind of preparation of their own children. But again, that's an offside, and it shouldn't be part of a school's curricula. So I'm hoping, and I really want to watch this very closely, that you will invite members of the public when you have your meetings, because you have your own committee to talk about this, and show us exactly what's in that curriculum, what materials you're using, from whence they come, and how they will be taught, and who specifically are going to teach them. We should have a right to know which teachers are teaching what in what schools, and at what grade levels. And I'd like to see that clearly spelled out. I'll take it a step further. I believe that there should also be provisions to put cameras in the classrooms so that any parent can tune in and watch. And let's not forget, you are here as volunteers, but you're working with your time and sweat to promote this school. But the teachers in this community work for us. We are the taxpayers. Whether you're a parent or you're a taxpayer, it's your school. So I hope you
your
will
time is
consider
up.
that, and thank you for your time.
John retired Woodbridge. Mr. Mayor, congratulations. You said something just before. You want to teach our children to understand, I guess, the racial problems or the other problems they got it. What makes you qualified? There's all kind of different minorities, different races, different white, black, you name it. What makes you people qualified to decide, do they know right thing or no? Besides, it's up to the parents, it's up to their upbringing to believe what they want, what they believe. So why do you want to change? I just want to ask you a simple question before going further. A quote, and I quote, said, "Give me the 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Who quoted it? Who said it? Anybody know? Vladimir Lenin, 100-some years ago. The second one, "Let me control the textbooks and I will control the state." Who said that? Adolf Hitler. Why do we do something that's not our job? I'm a grandparent, I have 3 children, and they went to this school. It was up to the parents to be the people. They sent them to you people in schools to teach them how to read, how to write, to compete the rest of the world. What other country, what other school in the world do what you want to do? You're going to push the people with the money, so to speaking. The kids going to leave public schools, go to private schools, go to any school, but they don't want you to brainwash the people, because whoever does the textbooks, you can't teach the whole world from one book. We got approximately 140 different countries that we have our schools. And my children go to foreign country in American school. They don't teach them those schools those things. Why do you have to do over here? I think what you're doing, you are separating people. You are say who the white, who the black, who's rich, who's poor. We should do that. Kids don't know that we teach them. It's a shame that you even get involved, because somebody got the idea that you're going to cure as a teacher. It's not your job. None of you, the teachers and school board, were trained to do those things. You taught how to teach them read and write, science, but not the racial. No churches could have done it so far. No politicians could have done it so far. It's up to the people themselves. If you want to start something good, start the nepotism. You can't tell the kids, this is good, this is bad, when the kid goes home and he's going to tell you, well, I didn't get a job because I'm so-and-so, and he got a job because this and that. This is what the problem is with ours. But it's up to the parents to be a young man. It's up to you to teach them how to succeed with the rest of the world. Because it's not just the United States. Our children, look just for example, Olympics. You don't get any breaks there. The good's going to win. The one that's less fortunate, not good enough, is going to lose. That's what it's supposed to be. That's the only way that adds up the numbers together. But don't get involved, do some political dirty work. They're going to press one against the other. It started problems. Kids don't know those things until we teach them. You can't pinpoint to the kid in school, well, your grandfather was wrong, your mother was wrong, your father was wrong, and this is what's supposed to be. What is going to do when he goes home? But please stay out of it. It's not our job, it's not your job. Maybe it's a state law, but let them put it the rest of the world, see how far they're going to get. They don't do it the rest of the world. It's American schools, funded as Americans. They don't push those programs the rest of the world. And they push it over here. Yes, we are. Country, no other country in the world as many people as we do. Foreign people, different religions, colors, you want to call, everything is over here. We will succeed, we will mend together, because we respect each other, especially the foreigners. We know how hard we had, we know how far it takes to get to the top, but maybe we can do it, but our children, grandchildren will get to the top. So please stay out of it, and let's teach them how to read and write, to succeed in the world. Thank you for your time.
Sure, I'm actually going to call on Dr. Massimino.
Thank you, Mr. Patak, for your comments. The state dictates what we teach in New Jersey. So the reason why I can confidently say we're not teaching critical race theory is because the reason why we do not teach CRT is because it's not in the standards or the mandates given by the state. The issue of diversity that you're speaking of, that Mr. Maris recited, that's a state mandate. So we're teaching standards of the mandate. We've been teaching in schools, when I went to school, about character education and about tolerance, peer leadership groups and peer mentoring, and that has been happening. What has happened now is the state has codified it and said, okay, these are certain standards we want to ensure every district is teaching. Woodbridge Township has been teaching tolerance and respect and different perspectives through character education programs since I was in school. So to answer your question, we're not just coming up with it. It's a state standard. It is also not something that's going to fit in a book. When we say infuse the curriculum, it's not a curriculum where we just have, this is what we're teaching about diversity. The idea is to infuse it so that students can start to make connections, all of our students, and we have a very diverse student body. So I think it is responsible and incumbent upon us to meet those student needs. The same way 20 years ago we were teaching them word processing, and now we're teaching them coding and web design because things have progressed. This too is progress in that area. And being that we have such a diverse group of students in our community, which I do believe is our strength, and they come from so many different backgrounds, we have no choice but to follow the standards given before us from the governor and the State Department of Education, and we intend to do that in the most responsible, grade appropriate fashion possible.
So again,
Mr. Vitek, your time is over.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. The woman behind you is ready to speak now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Colon. I live in Avenel, New Jersey. And I wanted to ask a question regarding your June 17th meeting minutes, where you approved the district-wide use of the material for Racial Equity and Justice Initiative. So when is this going to be introduced? You say it's going to be fused in. What does it look like, and can the parents take a look at it? How can the parents be more involved, supported or not supported? Because I come from corporate America, and it's been part of my day-to-day since I've been a professional for 35 years. So if you can help us, we can help our children.
Are you done with your comment and question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Dr. Massimino?
So thank you. We are working on our website. Our website is under construction, and I'm working with Mr. Ali to start posting some materials that I think will give parents and students a better understanding of how we're approaching this. A lot of it is how to approach the conversation. It is a very difficult conversation, so a lot of it is engaging them to understand the material, be able to have conversations responsibly. We're creating a framework for them. And as soon as we possibly can, I'm hoping within the upcoming weeks we'll be able to do that. Once it does go out, I'll be sure to send out a message to the parents so that you'll know where to look and where to find it, so you can start to review that type of material and have those conversations with your children of what that framework is going to look. So we hope to have it out in the upcoming weeks, and as soon as we do, I will let the community know. Thank you.
Dr. Massimino, do you have any emails received by the public regarding tonight's meeting?
No, I do not.
Okay. Once again, please note that the August board meeting has been rescheduled for Wednesday, August 25th. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Molnar, seconded by Mr. Treewater. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.